Welcome back to another edition of the Founder Spotlight. This week, I'm honored to have my dear friend Ben Kennedy from Fable back for another edition, this time live on video versus written. Welcome back, Ben. How you doing?
Lars, always a pleasure.
So, what was the moment or the experience that inspired you to create Fable, as a line of botanical cocktails?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. And, it's been said before, you do a yeoman's job, certainly on behalf of the beverage sector. So, Godspeed, my friend, and thank you. Yeah, it goes back. Fable's roots go back to really the legalization of cannabis in Colorado. So we're going back to 2000, I think 14, 15. And at that point in time, with cannabis readily available to most people, we'd see this kind of social, I say divide hesitantly because it wasn't a combative thing, but we'd see the folks that would drink and the folks that would not. And I saw this in the professional setting and the personal setting. I remember this. I worked for a corporation. I'm sure we'll get into that. And there was this leadership summit. People, the leaders had flown from all over the world to converge on Aspen for this leadership meeting. And one by one, I'd see them kind of walk off down to the bottom of the hotel, and behind a cluster of trees and a plume of smoke would appear, and then they come back up and they pick up their whiskey and carry on the night, and everybody was in the same boat, but nobody would. So it was a different world back then. There were different, social tensions that have gone away today, but it set us on the path of what if we could make an adult beverage that gave people the ability to imbibe without, the hangover the next day. And that really was what became a 5-year journey plus.
Yeah. So kind of, take us through that journey of the 5 years. Was that 5 years of development or just, was that 5 years ago now, or what was that process?
Yeah, I think it took us, I'd say it took us 12 months to realize we didn't know what we were doing. So that was, a good 12 months. I think Kristen was distilling vinegar in our basement at one point. The first thing we tried to do in all of this was replicate the bite of alcohol without the alcohol. That was the very beginning, before we thought about names or brands or anything. And God bless her, she started to try that with vinegar. So I know how to build brands. I have an education on marketing and what that entails, but when it comes to making a drink, it was new to the both of us. So I'd say a year, figuring things out. And then we worked with a flavor house for maybe 4 to 5 months, realized we had to pivot to achieve what we wanted to achieve, which was a credible alcohol alternative versus a vessel for THC. We wanted to really deliver an experience in consumption, which started with the drink. It just so happened that after you consumed it, you would get high. And that took us from flavor house to product development to a year of formulation, where this company worked with Starbucks and Danone and Red Bull and do things the right way and follow the right process. So there was a discovery phase, a definition phase, where we get together and taste these concoctions, and we were looking to replicate the bite, the burn, the flavor arc, the viscosity of an alcoholic drink. And that basically took us to Vitosa, maybe 2019-20. Ben would tell you, but that really set about a year of stability testing, because back then nobody had put the ingredients we'd chosen ever with cannabis emulsion before. So you didn't realize how the pH of real fruit would act. The liner of the can was a consideration. The weight of certain ingredients dropping to the bottom of the can, so there was a good 12 months working hand in hand with Vitosa. Around that time, can appeared on the market, and that really led to this kind of avalanche of seltzers, sodas. We ran kind of headfirst into COVID. Our manufacturer of choice had an Italian canning line. The challenge with a pandemic is you can't get the Italians over to put the thing together. So we lost a little time in launching in California, and eventually launched January of last year. So we've been in market coming up to 2 years now. But yeah, the path to getting it on a shelf took a long time, and there were ingredient and supply chain constraints, and manufacturing constraints, and science constraints, and all of the above.
Yeah, I don't think people really understand all the processes that go into launching any CPG brand, but in particular, beverage formulations, and then throwing in the added wrinkle of THC and emulsions and things like that. Adds another layer of complexity.
No, and Kristen reminds me, it sounds so strange now, but in the early days, Kristen was trying to source de-alcoholized alcohol because
Mm-hmm.
we were trying to replicate that burn, that taste, and she'd be laughed at. What you want to do? What? Because there was no non-alcoholic wave, so we were classed as kind of mad people for a little while. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you kind of have a background in marketing, and through that background, you led digital commerce at Omnicom, and what did that experience teach you, and how that influenced your approach to launching Fable?
Yeah, I had I was fortunate because I had a very unique role in a marketing career. It was
Mm-hmm.
in totality on the agency side, but more often than not for the enterprise or the holding group. So it was very unique. So typically in the agency world, you have the account function, the creative function, project management or production function. I kind of worked with one foot in corporate strategy and one foot in account management, business development, and
Mm-hmm.
there were two kind of main initiatives spanning a 15-year career. The first at WPP was to take an enterprise of 40,000 people and help figure out, as part of a small team, how we ushered in the age of mobile phones. This was 2007, and the iPhone was appearing, and the third screen was invented, and you had a very bureaucratic but traditional enterprise, making a lot of money for a lot of clients, and we had to figure out new processes, new skill sets, new definitions of creativity. How do developers work alongside creatives? How do account managers start to talk a new language? And that was business modeling on behalf of WPP and building a centralized hub, what we called a strategic business unit for mobile. And
Mm-hmm.
then over time, integrating people into these agencies, whether that be a Mindshare or a MediaCom, and building the capability then within the agencies and going from there. So the reason I share that is I couldn't draw a picture on a napkin, and I'm probably not the most organized of individuals. I wouldn't make the best account manager, but over the course of the time at WPP and Omnicom, you have to really hone in on the EQ and on the
Mm-hmm.
ability to have people all row in the same direction, work together. And I see a lot of parallels there with the cannabis world. We're an immature sector, really, when push comes to shove, and there's a lot of meeting in the middle and understanding concerns from both sides and figuring that out. And I think my time in marketing helped more on that side of things. The account management side of things gave me the baseline to communicate with our investors. As obvious as that sounds and as simple as that sounds, if you're working for a company that sells time and professional services, you're taught pretty early on to be professional and courteous and manage clients and manage expectations. And, all those things help when you're raising money, because you build belief with investors as you go, and you communicate and you manage their questions and expectations, and you vest them into what you're doing if you're lucky. So I think that more so than the traditional side. On the marketing side, I was very lucky to get the full 360. And I see marketing as a subway map. There are to build a brand, I think, takes 10 years. There's the more technical side of marketing, the attribution and performance side of things, the branding and messaging side of things, the content side of things, CRM, SEO. There's almost an infinite number of channels now. And when you work for an enterprise like Omnicom or WPP, you get to work with every specialist group over time
Mm.
in the trenches. So you get to see how these CPG brands really are built. And I feel very, very fortunate to have seen that.
Yeah. And so, you talking about brand and marketing and in particular messaging, your guys' tagline is drink intentionally. So how are you ensuring that ethos, permeates through every aspect of the brand that you're trying to build over the next, you're almost 2 years in, so over the next 8?
I think that the point behind drink intentionally actually goes back to the alcohol industry. We all know that the alcohol industry uses the term drink responsibly. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
well, we determined that we didn't need to be quite so patronizing in 2024. So we thought long and hard, what's our version of drink responsibly? And with Fable, there's an enormous amount of intent with Fable inside the can. And what we're learning is it's almost a little too thoughtful for its own good. And I actually have an example from a Instagram tasting this week. Fable was made to be very layered. They do change. Best Zest is very citrus heavy on the front, but by the time you finish that, it's actually quite a dry drink. So there's a lot of intent that we've put into making this drink an experience in consumption. And we
Mm-hmm.
ask that it takes a little time to chill it, to take your time sipping it. It's not a slammer. We're not a seltzer. We're not there on a hot day to quench your thirst. Fable really is a cocktail, and we hope people consume them as they would cocktails, and that is to say that they are savoured and enjoyed, and we'll cue people visually to put them in glasses if we can, but that's not necessary. We need to talk more about our process of manufacturing, which I hope you will see personally at some point, because we can show that we use real blackberries and real juices and real spices. We can show the world that. So that's what we mean by drink intentionally. There's a nod to social responsibility, but it's also you've bought this drink, let the drink do what it's supposed to do. And by that, drink it cold, take your time with it, try and pin those flavors as they unfold. And hopefully, you feel like you've had an alcoholic drink at the end of the day.
Yeah, you said two things there. You said layers, and you said as the drink unfolds. I think one of the first things I told you when we first spoke on the phone, however many months ago that was that there was a kind of like a wave from an effect standpoint. Was that like it didn't all hit me at once? Most drinks don't hit you all at once, but there was this kind of like wave. It's like, oh, this is kind of like an upper, and then like I'm coming down a little bit, but then I go back up, and there was definitely different effects that unfolded throughout the experience. So I think you definitely nailed that quite a bit there. Now,
Cool.
You've you've mentioned a few different challenges, but what would you say has been the biggest challenge outside of obviously the major regulatory hurdles that come and go and are constantly changing? But besides that, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you faced since launching, and ultimately how'd you overcome it?
Yeah, and it's a bit like a wedding cake of an answer, to be honest with you, because the hardest thing I think to date was figuring out how to get this drink made. The challenge we had, Lars, is the manufacturing infrastructure at the time was so basic, and this is what led to basic drinks. I'm not saying good or bad, but sugar flavor water, because you can do that based on the infrastructure that exists. The minute you start asking for pasteurization tunnels and telling manufacturers that you're dropping off £1,000 worth of light amber honey, they go, what? Because there's no experience, and that was a challenge. It was extremely frustrating. Beyond getting the drink made and taking it to a more relevant moment in time, where I used to get so anxious every time a new drink popped onto the market whilst we were doing our stability testing. And back then it was the California regulated market, and I look around now and there were probably 10 drinks. And if you look at the market today, there's probably closer to 1,000 drinks. I think the challenge we face today is extracting what's on the inside of Fable and showing that as a clear differentiator, and showing the benefits of the product and making the benefits of the product clear to the consumer. Now, I think we get into the nuance here of who is our consumer consumer and the kind of comfortable audience versus the addressable audience. And, the two are different. I think if you take the addressable audience and then the California regulated market audience, the two are even further different again. Our challenge is that there's so many drinks. And I think having a pretty can is pretty easy for everybody to do. I think the harder part of building a brand is that heartbeat of the brand that comes over time. And I think, we just now need to execute point of sale, within the 5 yard line. Procter and Gamble used to say the moment of truth when somebody is stood at shelf. How do you get them to pick up your product versus somebody else's? I've always believed that our goal is to remove the need for a shopper to think. So, right now we've just had a pass at the packaging because we didn't feel like the secondary packaging did enough to take the onus of thinking away. Now, I think we have a beautiful package? I do. I think the secondary looks great, but does it say cocktail, THC, premium ingredients? No, probably not. So there's constant failing forward iterations that we're making all the time as we're getting insights from the field, from the retail environment. And then you can apply the same to the DTC world as well. I joked on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, you type in drink Fable today and you'll probably get an ad from 3 of our friends. That's all fair, and it's marketing, but it doesn't make life easier, driving that cost per acquisition number down and showing investors that you can scale that with additional capital. And so a couple of challenges we've faced, and then today I think we know how to navigate them. I think it just requires more than anything focusing on who we are, remaining true to who we are, not getting sucked into the game of we need a 20 milligram and a 50 milligram and we need this and that and this and that. Like, I think we have to stay true to who we are and continue to make Fable as familiar as we can to our audience.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a few different times, from the fresh ingredients to mentioning wanting to be seen more on that premium side of things. A lot of non-alcoholic brands struggle to be received as a premium option for whatever reason. How has Fable differentiated itself to be seen as award-winning, a high-end option, and how are you guys going to continue to having that conversation and educate consumers that way?
I certainly think we are continuing to come across as premium, which was our intent, versus luxury. And I just think that's worth a distinction. I think luxury is not where we want to be. Premium or mass premium is where we want to be. So under that, with that context, the can versus a bottle is something we continue to think about now. When you launch a bottle in the regulated California market, where retailers are marking things up 300% and distros are marking things up 50%, a can of Fable that will cost $5 in Total Wines would cost you $14 in West Hollywood. Yeah. So we made decisions based on driving people into the funnel to forego a glass bottle, which if you put a gun to my head, Lars, I think befits our brand probably more than the can. We were in a bottle for a year, but reducing the cost of trial, the product goes into the can. I think the can does a job of looking premium. I think the ingredients themselves cost more to make than a seltzer. If your average seltzer, with packaging costs 75 cents to make, Fable's almost double that, 160, 170, because we're using ginger and cinnamon and cardamom and pepper and the likes. So there are premium ingredients, I think, at the heart and soul of the drink. So I think that gives us a right to play in certain territories, and that's not to say other brands don't have the right. I am not saying that, but I'm only interested in Fable. For us, I think we had a right to play at the Aspen Food and Wine Classic. That was a rigorous selection process. We didn't think we'd get in. It was a shot. But it was a moment of reinforcement. Like somebody else gets this. Like they see the time and the attention that's gone into these drinks, and they appreciate them. Now, how do we replicate that across multiple channels? I don't know. I think we have to figure that out as we go. I think it all comes down to our target audience, and the data is showing that our target audience is 40 plus right now, and we need to take that into account. That will help determine, okay, well, how do we credibly connect with that audience on their terms, in a classy way, And I think that's probably the last point, Lars. You asked about premium, but I, I I think everybody on the team has a bit of class about them. On the Fable team,
Hmm.
how we treat people, and how we resist the urge to jump in and let FOMO guide what we do. And I think that's important if you can stay classy in life. With how you partner with other companies, and I hope that comes through as well in how we talk and how the brand shows. So a lot I could go into a lot more answers on product situ shots, but we get into the dirty tactics at that point.
Yeah. I would love to, see a bottled Fable myself. Were you selling those in individual bottles or?
Yeah. So they were called the Nordic bottle, and it was a 250, I think.
Okay.
And that was, you see, the California, yeah.
Yep.
So that was going on the shelves in California, and you got two servings out of them, and you see this as a cocktail. I mean, herein lies the rub right here. You
Yep.
put 100 seltzers with this guy, and to the naked eye, we may as well be a seltzer. So we know that, and we have, there's means and ways of overcoming that. So time will tell.
Now, if you could sum up Fable's mission in one sentence, what would it be?
I think we can. I do believe we can disrupt the alcohol industry. I think we can give adults a healthier means of decompressing at the end of the day. When you and I had dinner together, we talked about conventions and tensions and solutions, and I do believe at the most macro level that the most powerful brands in the world identify a tension, or a convention, and they disrupt it. And I think,
Hmm.
um, mainly due to our mobile phones, we are more anxious than we've ever been. I really believe that. There's no escaping, the wars and famines and domestic issues, they're right here 24/7. So I think the tension is that non-alcoholic products can replicate the taste of an alcoholic beer, but not help somebody take the edge off their day. And if we can
Hmm.
do that in a way that's less harmful than alcohol, then I think we have a good shot of disrupting what I call the alcoholic week. Never, ever, ever should we in the industry talk of displacing alcohol completely, because that's just it. I think it makes us all look a little silly. But if we can help somebody go from drinking 5 days a week to drinking twice a week, and they supplement
Hmm.
Fable on a Friday and a Saturday, then that's a disruption. That's a generational disruption, and I think that's what we as founders across the board are trying to do.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ben. And until next time, guys, cheers.
Cheers, Lars. Good seeing you, mate.